Hi everybody, for those of you that just joined, we're just going to wait another minute or so just for people to join and get acclimated, and then we'll get started. So if anybody has any issues with viewing my screen or viewing the deck that I'll be presenting, um, please let me know. I'll be going back and forth, so I'll go through the deck as well as showing you some of the functionality within Plandek as well. So again, we'll wait another minute or two, and then we'll get started. Let's see, we have a few people. So I'll just wait another minute. For those of you that are in the US and North America, I hope the heat wave has subsided a little bit for you, um, and that it is a little bit easier to go outside and walk around today. But yeah, I know the last few days have been a little bit brutal. Um, but I know there's people from everywhere around here, so this is perfect. Okay, I think it's 4:03. Conscious of people's times as well, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time here. So we'll get started. So, hi everyone, my name is Dawood Hussain. I'm from the customer success team here at Plandek, and I'm really excited to be taking you through today's session on the speed metrics and welcome you to this edition of Plandek's Masterclass series. So, when we're talking about the speed metrics today, we'll go through how we define them, how we measure them, and most importantly, how we use them to accelerate the delivery of value across your engineering teams. And so this isn't just a session about working faster, it's about working smarter, understanding where delays and inefficiencies exist within your delivery pipeline, and giving you the tools to remove that friction without sacrificing any of your quality and your predictability as well. So we'll go forward. And just as an intro, I'm going to start with why speed matters. And so for those of you that have attended the predictability webinar that I did, that simple question of why speed matters sort of goes into every aspect of your delivery lifecycle. I think the reality today is that delivery expectations are getting tighter. Stakeholders want faster features, or features faster rather. Customers expect quicker turnarounds, and engineering teams are being asked to move at a pace that matches the rapid changes in today's market. And so, when we talk about speed, we're not just talking about velocity for the sake of it. We're talking about the speed of value, the pace at which ideas move from a backlog to the hands of your users. And that's the metric that actually matters because that's the one that the business cares about. And so, when we measure and it, when we measure and improve speed effectively, the benefits are quite huge. We see engineers feel more in control, delivery becomes more consistent, stakeholders gain trust, and customers see results faster. And so speed isn't just a delivery metric, it becomes a competitive advantage. And I know everyone in this call understands that as well. So for those of you that haven't come across our productivity framework, at Plandek, we frame engineering productivity around four core pillars. So speed, predictability, quality, and focus. Now, speed is what it says on the tin. It's about how fast you deliver value. Predictability is whether you've delivered what you've planned. Quality is around the stability and reliability of what you deliver. And then focus reflects whether your engineering effort aligns with your business priorities as well. So these pillars are deeply interconnected. You know, if speed goes up but your quality drops, you lose trust. Your focus is low, but teams are busy, but they may not be necessarily impactful to what is on your roadmap and your business priorities. And so we recommend tracking all four to get a full picture of team health. And in today's session, we'll focus specifically on the speed pillar. But please do keep that bigger picture in mind when we talk around speed as well. So we'll go on to the metrics that we'll cover within the speed pillar as well. So we've broken it down into five core metrics: lead time to value, cycle time, time to merge PRs, time to deploy, and merge frequency per author. So each of these metrics captures a different part of your delivery process, and together they provide an end-to-end view of how your work flows. So from ideation all the way to production, and they help you spot where time is lost and where there's time to improve. And so we'll explore each one in detail now. So if we go into our speed metrics, and we spoke about them just now as well, but lead time to value is the first one. And so lead time to value is a top level metric essentially that tracks the total time from when a ticket enters, from when a ticket is created from ideation, all the way to when that value is delivered to end users of production. So from ideation to done, or ideation to complete, or whatever your definition of done is. And so it reflects how quickly your ideas then turn into impact. It captures that full journey, from backlog to analysis to coding to code review to testing, all the way to being done and in release. And so longer lead times can signify and indicate feedback loops that might be a bit slow. A ticket might get stuck in QA or wait a few days for a pull request or sit in a merge state with no deployment, and each delay of that compounds. So this is important to track because it's a proxy for your ability to adapt and change. If a competitor ships faster, they learn faster, they pivot faster, and so they have an advantage. And so tracking this within Plandek lets you break it into stages, zoom into specific problem areas, which we'll show in a second, but also you'll know exactly where that bottleneck is, whether it's in specific stages, whether it's in specific priorities, and that visibility allows teams to make targeted and measurable improvements. Now, there is a caveat here as well, which is for teams that iterate quickly, for Kanban teams, that lead time will be quite slow because they'll be able to pick up tickets almost immediately, and that lead time and that time backlog won't necessarily be that large. But for sprint teams, especially those that groom that backlog and stack up sprints in advance for teams to then take that sprint once it goes forward, that lead time might be a little bit larger. So there is caveats to be applied to here, but we can see here the top performing teams have a lead time typically under 21 days, and so that's the area where you kind of want to be at. But if we go into cycle time now as well, now this is slightly different. So rather than from ideation to production, cycle time looks at the active development phase. It looks at from when the ticket is picked up from a developer all the way to when it is completed. So it zooms into that piece of work. So we exclude the backlog statuses, and it's one of the most sort of diagnostic engineering metrics, if you like. It shows whether teams are focused and flowing or whether work is sort of stalling in that mid-process. And it's useful because long cycle times can often often reveal sort of hidden dysfunction, if you like. Is the story poorly defined? Is there a lack of people working in QA and UAT processes, and that's why it's taking too long? Is the engineer potentially context switching too much, and that's why it's taking too long? Are there too many handoffs? And so in Plandek, you can break that down. You can see how much time is spent in each of those active phases of work, development, review, QA, etc., etc. And that granularity gives you a real sense of where teams are efficient and where they're not. And sort of fixing that cycle time improves your team's throughput. It also boosts morale. It removes the frustrating pauses and unlocks a healthier sort of engineering plan and rhythm. And so this is the one, cycle time is where teams are really, really focused, because you can have short and long backlog times depending on how the team is performing and how the team works. But a cycle time is really, okay, so when my engineer picks it up, is he clear on the things that he needs to work on? How quickly are we doing that? And we can break that down in multiple different ways, which I'll show you shortly as well. But that is cycle time. So that's the second one out of 5. The next one is time to merge PRs, or time to merge pull requests. And so this measures how long a pull request remains open before it's been merged into another branch. And we track this because slow PR merges are one of the most common and costly sources of delivery delay. They kill momentum. And what people don't sometimes realize is that your PR process actually accounts for 25 to 30% of your actual cycle time. And delivery leads and managers, people that lead teams, can often spend time focusing on what is happening in Jira without actually understanding what's happening in the repositories. And so the longer a PR sits, the harder it becomes to resolve conflicts, to validate changes, to maintain context. And it's a leading indicator that we've noticed, as well as some of the cultural problems that you'll see as well, like unclear ownership or and things like that. So in Plandek, the metric you'll be able to track the metric both at an org level and a team level. Same with all the metrics that we have, and you can spot outliers, you can highlight risky delays. You can also see within the stages, like which stage takes the longest, whether it's a time to review, which is from when the PR is authored to the first comment, and that first comment will be someone that hasn't authored the PR. From time to review to time to approve, so when someone has given the last approval for that PR, and that time taken there, and then the time to merge from that last approval to the time to merge. And so, typically for teams that struggle with this, we always see bottlenecks within the approval stage and the review stage. The time to merge stage never really is that long because teams do that pretty quickly, but it then highlights where those delays are happening if they are happening at all. And so the next metric, the fourth metric out of the five, is time to deploy, and this comes from the same metric, which is the lead time for change. But on here, we just filter for the time to deploy stage, and this measures how long it takes from the moment code is merged until it reaches production, and that can be where a lot of teams lose time as well, and it's usually avoidable because sometimes deployment is, it can be, you want it to be as iterative as possible. Now, we understand that some teams, which is why we also track time to merge PRs, may have deployment cycles that are every quarter or at the end of every month. And so therefore your time to deploy may not be that important. But for teams that are iterative and want to deploy constantly, this is a really good sort of way of tracking that and being like, okay, so we've merged the PR, how long does it take to deploy? And so this enables you to feel confident about the release process if it's good, and if it's not good, it enables you to kind of track, okay, like what can we do to try and improve this? Do we have enough people actually looking at the deployment process? Is it just that we build a backlog of merge PRs and then merge them all at once? So it gives a clear sense of delivery readiness. The shorter times here mean that you can respond faster to the user's needs. You can fix bugs sooner. And Plandek lets you set up this metric using your deployment data as well. So for the time to merge PRs, we just look at the pull request process. But in order for you to see the time to deploy metric, we would need your deployment data in there too. So you can track how long the code is stuck post merge. And once you start to shorten this time, it does unlock a lot of agility within the business and within the team as well, and surfaces those inefficiencies within your release process. Are we waiting unnecessarily? Could we automate more? These are the kind of questions this metric helps answer. And then the last one is merge frequency per author, and this essentially reveals and measures how often individual engineers are contributing code to your branches. So why does this matter? And it matters because the frequency reflects the rhythm within the team, and teams with a healthy cadence of merges tend to be more iterative, less prone to risk, and more engaged as well. And so higher frequency, or higher merge frequency rather, means engineers are breaking work into sort of smaller, more manageable chunks. It means PRs are easier to review, they're less prone to conflict, and you're more likely to ship quickly as well. So within Plandek, you can use this metric for a couple of different ways. And the first is the most obvious one, which is to spot engineers who may be stuck or overburdened. Sometimes we can see that there may be a large chunk of work fixed on one engineer, and there may be others that can sort of help and re-baseline that sort of work. We can use it to sort of track delivery rhythm as it evolves over time. And the last one is to assess whether you're actually accelerating output as well. So it's a great conversation starter. It's, if someone hasn't merged in a week or a couple of weeks, it's not necessarily about policing, but it's about asking, are you stuck? Is something blocking you? And it's how some of these metrics within Plandek can support coaching as well. And that's a really important thing, because if your developers and your authors are merging PRs at a more iterative rate, it comes back to that same thing, that you're less prone to risk and the more engaged, and you're more iterative then as well. So I'm just going to come out of the deck for a second, and I'm just going to show you the dashboard that I've created as well. Now, this is Plandek's own instance, and so you can see here there's the speed dashboard that I have here and the predictability dashboard that I set up a couple of weeks ago for those of you that did attend that one. Now, you're able to bring the speed dashboard into your own instance and your own workspace as well. So if you click on Manage Dashboards here, you'll find under Plandek Templates, You scroll down, there'll be the speed dashboard here, and you can click on the plus button, and that will then bring that into your workspace. I can see, Kareem, you have your hand up, so I'm just going to allow you to yeah, ask that question. Go ahead. Oh, Kareem, can you hear me? I cannot hear you, Kareem. I think we'll have to come back to that. Kareem, if you wouldn't mind, if you could ask the question in the Q&A, and I'll be more than happy to answer that shortly as well. I think we might have an issue with your mic, unfortunately. Okay, perfect. So I'll move on. I can see there's a couple of questions in the Q&A already, so I'll answer them now as well. Um, Forgive if duplicative, but will slides be available for review? Yes, we will send the slides out directly after the session, so you will be able to review them. And can you share some information about the universe size of the data showing the team's performance, i.e., how many PRs, how many teams, how many engineers, SME startups? So yes, we can. So we for the benchmark reporting, and so for some of the um, metrics that you see here, so when we have a look at the top performers, the medium, the struggling, and the bottom, we've actually compared around 1,500 teams that we have within Plandek. Um, so so it comes from the data from all of our clients that we have and all the individual teams that we have. So it's a pretty substantive um, database that we have across multiple different clients and multiple different industries and sectors within that industry as well. So yeah, it is a pretty substantive database. I can come back to you on how many engineers, but the industry sizes vary. So there will be some clients that we have that have engineers and developers of 500 plus, some that have like some that have like 20 or 30. So so yeah, it's a really varied data set across again 1,500 teams. I will ask for how many engineers. I'm not too sure, but I will get back to you on that. And thank you for asking as well. Does your product work with Rally and Jira? It works with Jira. It works with ADO. Rally isn't an integration we have at the moment, but what I can do is speak to the product team and see whether that's something we do have in the roadmap and whether that's something we can consider going forward as well. But yeah, leave that with me. I'll reach out to you after the session too. Okay, perfect. I'll go back to the dashboard quickly. Sorry, to Plandek. So I've shown you here how you can add the speed dashboard into your workspace. And so you can see here we have the lead time to value. So if I click on Explore, we'll see here now, once this loads up, how I've set this up. So all the metrics within Plandek come in this overtime view here. So you'll see they'll come as a line chart. Now with lead time to value, in the metric settings on the right-hand side, if I click on the calculation tab, it will allow me to select the statuses that I want to select for my workflow. Now, for lead time to value, typically we don't select anything because we want to have a look at all of the statuses because we're encompassing from when the ticket was created all the way to when the ticket was delivered. So we don't typically filter on any statuses. But what we will do is potentially filter on issue type because I want to have a look at the issue type um, story. So I want to have a look at story because I'm having a look at issue types that are delivering value. So I'll filter on story. Now this will be my lead time to value for the stories that I have. So we'll let this update for a second. And you can see here my lead time to value is around 15 days. Now there's other filters that we can apply here too. So if I wanted to have a look at a specific Jira team, I can bring that in. If you have that field, if you use that field, if I want to filter for a specific sprint, I can do that too. And I've also applied something called outliers as well. So at Plandek, you can see that we can apply an outlier filter. And so for lead time to value for cycle time, we typically apply a 90% outlier filter, or P0 to P90 rather. And the reason we do that is because we understand that we want the your lead time to be normalized. We don't want to take that top 10% just because they could be down to people leaving business, people or developers rather, being on sick leave, and therefore a whole myriad of circumstances, and they may not be reflective of the actual team's performance. And so we tend to remove that top 10% just so we can have a normalized view and a reflective view on how that team is performing in terms of their lead time. What I've also done in this metric is I've clicked on manage breakdowns and I've selected the status breakdown here. And so every breakdown that you select, it will appear in this row here. So if I click on by status, and you can see actually my view of by status. So I can already now see what are my bottlenecks for my lead time. And I can see the tickets that have been completed over the last 12 weeks. So for those of you that aren't aware, Plandek, when you initially go into it, by default, the time range or the date range that we look at is the past 12 weeks, and we can change that here now by either the past 4, the past 26, the past 12, or by a custom time range as well, and we can split that granularity by daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly, depending on the time range. Now, for the last 12 weeks, I can see actually the vast majority of my time in my lead time to value for the user stories is just over 8.5 days. And I can see that's a bottleneck where we may try and resolve, but that's a really good lead time to value. Now, what I can do as well is on this breadcrumb here is actually click on cycle time and actually see the other metrics within my dashboard. So if I click on cycle time over here, we can now see that my cycle time is 4.52 days. And what I've done here in the calculation is actually select the statuses that are applicable to my cycle time. And what I mean by that is I've gone in here, whereas in lead time to value, I haven't selected any statuses because I want to see the full end-to-end view. For cycle time, what I've done is actually selected the statuses from in development, which is from when the developer picks it up in our case, all the way to done. So the last status would be awaiting deployment, and I can actually see how long it takes within each of these statuses here because I've broken cycle time down by status too. But I haven't filtered on user story. So if I scroll down in filters here, I can click on issue type, and I can actually click on story here. And then this will update for stories too. Now, once this updates, I just want to highlight the percentage tracker here. So I'm just hovering over this now. So you can see the cycle time has gone up by 0.63%. Now, this depends on the date range that you pick. So what this does is it compares the 12-week period that you're looking at to the previous 12-week period. So if you selected the 4-week period, it would compare it to the previous 4-week period. So we can actually see my cycle time has gone up slightly from 4.79 days to 4.82. And so it's always a good way to compare data here as well. And I can see here my outliers are at P90. So I've removed that top 10%. But if I wanted to filter on a specific board, a specific project, a filter out a certain resolution type, so if I go into resolution, I can exclude actually the tickets that won't do supersede and deferred, and just have a look at the tickets that are done to have a more accurate view. I can do that in here too. So we can amend, although these metrics come out of the box within the template, and you can add them all in here as well. So you can add all the metrics in here too. If I click on add metric, I can add all the ones down here. There's around 50 that come out of the box. All of them are configurable to your own use cases, and you can slice and dice the data however you see fit. I can see there's a question from Tony. So let's see. Okay, there's 2 questions from Tony. So the first is, I'm assuming that the data from existing Plandek users. Is it fair to assume that people not measuring at all are mostly worse than your bottom 25%? In my experience with chunky orgs, 9-time dev cycle would be considered great. That is correct. So there's a caveat to be applied here. So when we have a look at large organizations, they may have different workflows. And so you have to take that into consideration, especially with the size of the org as well. But yeah, large organizations with a cycle time of 9 days, that typically would be considered good. But we do have large organizations here when we did the benchmark reporting that actually perform even better than that and are within our top 25% percentile. And the second question is, how do you map statuses in Jira to your consistent set? Is it common to see many different workflows with teams with dozens of different status names? It is. So that is one of the problems that we do see. And so for individual teams, it's not necessarily too much of an issue because we're having a look at that one workflow. When you try and aggregate that data up to an organizational view, and you're trying to see, okay, like how am where are the bottlenecks for my teams, that can be a slight issue. So best practice and what we recommend here at Plandek is having a a unified workflow across all of the teams, or having a straw man of that unified workflow. So you still have the same start point and the same end point, but there may be for certain teams that have a little bit more granularity, a couple of statuses here and there that allow them to track that granularity, which then allow you to actually see across that unified workflow where those bottlenecks are within the organization. So yeah, when you have a look at an organizational view and you do want to see this in terms of how my organization is performing rather than my team, having a standard workflow across all the teams is pretty important and the best way to try and track that. So I hope they answered your questions there, Tony. And okay, there's one question from Emily as well. Are you able to exclude non-working days in the date range to avoid data being screwed by weekends, etc.? At the moment, no. And the reason is just because we have many clients across many different territories across the world, and some of those have different weekend dates as well. So for clients that we have across the Middle East, they may have a weekend across a Friday and Saturday rather than a Saturday and a Sunday. It is something we're looking into, Emily, but at the moment it's not something we have available yet. But I'll come back to you on that and see where we are in terms of maybe introducing that functionality and speaking to the product team around that too. Okay, perfect. So there's three more metrics in here that I wanted to show as well. So the other one is time to merge PRs. And so as we were saying earlier, we can actually see here, if I click and explore, how to set this up. So the first is I have excluded the stage time to deploy because I don't want to look at the deployment time within here. And I've also filtered for the state merged. And so the outliers I've set is to P95 because I just want to have a look at the 95 percentile for this one. And then what I've done here is I've broken down by stage. And so you can now see here in each individual stage how long it takes to merge my PRs. And so we can see the time to review is quite low. It's under 1 hour, which is really good. The time to approve takes around 4 hours, and the time to merge and close takes around 3 hours. Now, we come across clients actually that may have a time to approve and a time to review that are super, super high. And those are really low hanging fruit to try and resolve. It's really cool to try and to see the actual improvement across that performance as well, and across those different stages. So again, as I mentioned earlier, your time to merge PRs accounts for a quarter to 25 to 30% of your actual cycle time. So fixing that and actually actioning that and making sure those PRs actually go through that process, and you do have people reviewing them quickly, you do have people approving them quickly, and making sure you allocate resource towards that is a really crucial way of actually reducing your cycle time and making sure you're able to deliver faster and deliver to market faster as well. And so we go away from time to merge PRs, you can also see here there's time to deploy. It's the same metric, it's a lead time for change metric, but instead of excluding time to deploy on on stage rather, I've included time to deploy. So you can see here, I've just included time to deploy, and I can see my time to deploy across each individual week for the last 12 weeks here. And so it takes around 58 hours for this team to deploy, typically from merge to deploy. And we can see where the spikes are, which may be explained by, like a potential product release or something going wrong. And we can see where the troughs are as well, where the team actually iterated really, really quickly. And the one thing I haven't shown you actually is all the metrics have a data table below. And so you can actually scroll down and see the number of pull requests that were deployed in that individual week or that day or month, depending on the granularity of the time frame that you've chosen. Apologies. Always, sometimes you won't necessarily have the full view, so do make sure to click on next if you do have more than 10 entries in that data set as well. So you can see that here. Then we can also again see by the percentage whether it's whether you've actually improved that performance or the performance has gotten worse over that time frame that you're looking at too. So yeah, again, we've had a look at stage, we've filtered on merged, the state, and filtered on merged, and with stage we've filtered on time to deploy. And the last one, if I go back to the speed dashboard here, is the merge PR count. So the merge, the merge frequency per author. So this one is really cool in terms of understanding, is there a bottleneck across certain engineers? So if I click on explore here, you can actually see, okay, I can see Demetrius and Martin have the the highest numbers of PRs here. We'll exclude this for now, and you can exclude certain authors from the filtering as well. So if I click on author here, I can actually exclude any bots within the code base as well. So if I click there and exclude VOX12, we'll now see that bar disappear in just a second. But this allows me to understand, okay, where is the work being attributed? Who is authoring most of the PRs? Do we need to try and refactor this? Is there a bottleneck on one person? And how can I try and refactor that as well? So again, this is a really good one to try and understand speed and say, okay, like I can see Demetrius is merging multiple PRs, and I can click into the bar here and actually see how long they've taken, the comment counts, the ticket keys, the state that it's in. And if you click on the link here, it will actually take you to that pull request too. So it's just here to try and help you understand, okay, like what can I do to make sure my team delivers faster? What can I do to try and reduce the stress on them as well as delivering faster? And how do we get to a point where, the team are stable, predictable, but quick? And so those are the metrics within the dashboard. What I also wanted to talk around is sort of what can slow your delivery process down. And some of the common causes that we see are unclear and oversized stories, delayed PR reviews, too much work in progress, manual deployment steps, and sort of blocked test environments as well. So sometimes you'll see across multiple clients that we have that they have a block status where people don't necessarily action that too. And so a good way to try and estimate size, and I didn't show you this in cycle time, but I will now. If I click on explore, and just to show you how you can sort of manipulate some of the metrics to try and understand certain use cases, I can break down cycle time by story points, for example. And if I click on here, and this falls into a little bit of the predictability webinar that we did last month. If I click on story points here, and then click on the My Story Points view, I can actually see now how long it takes for the team to deliver stories of a certain story point size. So for stories that are 5 story points over the last 12 weeks, it's taken me just over 5.5 days. But I can also see here that it's taken me 5.5 days to deliver story points that have been tickets, sorry, that have been attributed 1 story point. And that again goes back to, are we estimating correctly? Do we actually understand the size of our tickets? Because if we're not, and we're not able to estimate correctly, that means that we'll get slower in our process to deliver because we're having to re-baseline the amount of effort that goes into completing these bits of work. And that ultimately leads to you having less things done in your sprint, less tickets done in your sprint, more carryover, and it cannibalizes that value for you to deliver more stories and more value in future sprints because you're constantly trying to catch up. So understanding that estimation process is a big part of being able to deliver quickly too. And so just highlighting the many different things that the many different fields that you can break down in this sort of managed breakdowns view to try and understand and have a true view of what is happening within your cycle time. And I can see there's a couple of other questions here, so I'll go back to that before I touch on Gen AI. So, and do we integrate directly with GitHub? Yes, we do. We do integrate directly with GitHub and Bitbucket and ADO as well. So for those of you that have your repos in any of those 3 platforms or those 3 tools, we do, and then you can bring in that PR data into, and you can actually visualize that within the time to merge PRs here. For Tony, I can see, can you drill all the way down to individual tickets and pull requests? Like, e.g., if you see a bad week, can you drill down and see which teams were the problem? You can. So if we go into, let's say, time to merge PRs, for example, and we click into time to approve, I can actually drill into the individual pull request, and that's the same for cycle time as well. So if I go into cycle time or lead time, and I click on any of the bars of the data points here, I can click into that ticket and it will take me into that Jira board where that ticket is hosted. And I can see who owns it. I can whether it's in a specific team. Especially if you have workspaces that contain multiple boards or multiple teams, you can actually break down by multiple workspaces and teams as well. And I'll show you how to do that briefly too. So let's see. So In this instance, for this masterclass series, I'm only collecting from one board, so it won't give me the option to do that. But if you were to create, let's see, actually, if we go back here, let's go back. I'm going to go into the demo workspace that we have. If I click on Add Workspace here, I can actually create a workspace for a collection of teams. So if I click on Continue, I can create a workspace full of multiple teams. So if I click on Business Reporting and Code Metrics Test, I need to name the workspace. So we're just going to call this Test. And I'm going to put it into the Masterclass workspace category that I have. I can create a new one if I need to as well, and then click on Create. What this will do then is if you manage multiple teams and they sit across multiple workspaces, what this will do is in certain metrics like lead time, like cycle time, like completed work, this will then give you the ability on the breakdowns and the filters to be able to filter by certain work by the workspaces that you've included or by the teams that you've included. So you can also do this if you have a custom field within Jira, within ADO, or a label within Jira and ADO that specifies a team on the ticket. We'll be able to filter and break down by that as well. So you can actually see which teams had an issue that week or that month or by the time period that you were looking at. So Tony, we can catch up after this as well, and I can show you an example of that within your own workspace as well. And lastly, Jose, lovely to see your name again. I've copied your speed dashboard across. When I do click on Explore for two of the metrics, time to merge PRs and time to deploy, I got dashboard not found. Maybe I've done something wrong, but I can see all the other metrics. Jose, I will catch up with you after the session on that, and we'll troubleshoot that and see why that's happening, because that shouldn't be happening. But leave that with me, and I'll message you on Teams afterwards, and we can go and discuss that as well. Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to go back into the masterclass series here, and I want to talk a little bit about Gen AI while we have a couple of minutes before the end of the session. So you can see here that we have an integration now with GitHub Copilot, and everyone's talking about Gen AI and getting super excited by it because of the promises vendors have made and the capabilities in that space too. But a key question that we've come across is, does it actually help teams deliver faster? And one of the challenges we often see in the industry, though, is actually trying to understand what we're getting out of these tools. And speaking to leaders in particular, they tend to ask three themes of questions. And the first one is, what is the adoption? Are we actually using them? Is it providing value for money? How are we using it? And what is the impact of us using it? And so with Plandek Copilot metrics, if I click on Copilot analysis here, you will have to integrate this as well. So it won't necessarily appear with your data straight away. You will have to integrate this. You can measure adoption impact by clicking on the Copilot analysis tab and actually seeing, okay, how many people are using Copilot? So I can see here there's 10 licensed users, the total engagement is 70, so that adoption rate is 70%, and then the daily engagement rate as well. So immediately I'm saying, okay, are my developers and are my team members actually using Copilot, and are they getting benefit out of it? The next is suggestions. So it's, are engineers actually accepting the suggestions that Copilot is throwing at them? Is what is the code acceptance rate? What is the line acceptance rate? Again, it comes back to that question of, is it actually providing value for my engineers? Are my engineers using it? And are they finding it useful and helpful? And so we can see here through the code acceptance rate and the line acceptance rate, which are both, in my instance, almost 25%, there is significant usage of that. And then I can also go down and actually have a look at the suggestion acceptance breakdown and see through Python, or see rather, what language a team's particularly using, and also the top editor as well. So I can toggle that here and actually see and understand what is the top language for the suggestion acceptance and what is the top editor for that too. And if I scroll up as well, I can actually filter by specific teams and specific organizations. So I've only integrated one organization within GitHub Copilot, so I can only see this project. But if I were to have more, I can filter on specific ones and specific teams within that organization too. The chat is probably one of the most interesting ones for me, and it's the chat usage rate and the web chat usage rate, and actually seeing the interactions here as well and understanding, okay, like how many sessions were initiated, how many chat suggestions were copied. So all this does is try to build a picture of, if we're using some of these Gen AI tools like Copilot, are we seeing value in it? Are teams using it? Are we getting clear visibility into whether Gen AI or Copilot is moving the needle for me as a business? And this is where the impact tab comes in. So if I click on impact, I can actually choose a workspace to select from, and I can actually choose the time period. So one of the key use cases here is you can choose a time period from before you integrated with Copilot and after you integrated with Copilot. And you can actually see the delivery impact here. So you can actually see, okay, is Copilot and the use of Copilot actually affecting my lead time for change, my deployment frequency, my throughput in terms of tickets, and how many story points I'm delivering as well, and actually measure that impact in a quantifiable way. And the same with quality as well. Like if I compare the time periods, for example, for let's say the 26th of May was when we started using Copilot, and the previous month was when we weren't using Copilot. I can actually see, has that had an impact on my quality as well, and we can see potentially that it may have done. It may have reduced my quality rather than it gotten better, because maybe teams or engineers are a little bit more lax in sort of accepting the suggestions and actually proofing them. So and then I can compare this across workspaces too. So I can compare the Masterclass series workspace against another workspace, for example, say R&D data, and I can actually see the performance against different workspaces too. So all this is trying to do is try and help teams and organizations answer the questions of are Gen AI tools making us faster? And Copilot is the first foray into that space for us to try and help answer that question. There are further integrations that we're planning to make in the near future. But for those of you that do have data within GitHub and use Copilot, or data within ADO and use Copilot, it is quite a simple process of getting this integrated and understanding actually whether it's having an impact on your team or not. And I know for those of you that were on the predictability metrics webinar as well, we showcase SmartView sprints, and I'm going to take a minute or two to go through this as well, because this is another way that you can increase your speed as well. It's not just based on the metrics that I've shown you in the speed dashboard and looking at sort of completed work and completed releases and understanding what we can do to improve, but you can also have a look at your live sprints here and now and understand what can I do to try and refactor some of the work in my sprint, mid-sprint, to make sure I deliver that at the end of the sprint, so I'm not having to carry that work over. And so we can see here within SmartView, and within the latest sprint that I have, so this will show you the latest sprints or the current active sprints that you've got. And so I can see within here what tickets I have in the stages to do, in progress, and done, and you can configure those stages in here too. So you can choose which statuses are in to do, which statuses are in that in progress bucket, and which statuses are in that done bucket. And you can actually see, okay, cool, like now that I've configured that, how many story points do I have in those 3 stages, and what insights do I have against them as well? So each ticket is compared against historical data within that board, and then we try and understand whether there are insights that need to be flagged against those tickets for delivery leads or project managers or team leads to try and understand, do we need to try and take some action against this ticket to make sure it's done by the end of the sprint? So if I click on insights here, so I can see there's 4 new in the 8 story points, or in the tickets that we happen to do. And so there's 2 insights against this one: implement searchable epic drop-down navigation controls. Now if I click on the arrow here, I can actually see, okay, the first issue was the story's been in waiting development for 6 days, which is above the normal threshold of 5 days compared to other story points, to other stories of 5 story points in this workspace. And the second one is that the issue was added to the sprint 4 days after the sprint started. So it's there to, sorry, it's there to essentially say there may be a potential issue here. Can you review this before the sprint end? Do you need to speak to your developer about this? And can we action it to try and get this ticket done by the end of the sprint? And if you can, it means you've got more value and more time to deliver in the next sprint, because you can actually plan to deliver new value in the next sprint rather than trying to deliver the value you should have delivered in the previous sprint. And so that is what this is trying to do. And so if we scroll down now as well, we can have a look at sprint risk. So we calculate the sprint risk based on the insights that we have here. So we can see the sprint is ending here today, which is why the sprint risk is at 100, and we haven't delivered everything that we said we would in the sprint. So you can see here all the different types of insights we have. And now for SmartView sprints, there's 10 different types of insights that we could potentially apply to any of your tickets. So we can see here sprint burn down is a very high risk because we should have closed 33 tickets by now, but we've only closed 26. Ticket commit, so we can see there's 1 out of 2 in progress tickets that have been waiting for commit longer than usual. Risk of distraction is one of my favorite ones actually, which is people working on this sprint have 1 ticket outside in progress outside of this sprint. So are they being distracted by work that may not necessarily be a business priority? Increased developers is another one. We can see here delayed tickets, added work, more files changed, more repos changed. And now some of these will have 0% against them because they don't necessarily apply to any of the tickets that they have. Within the sprint, delayed pull requests and carryovers. And that all of that accumulates into your sprint view here as well. So you can see your stand up, burn up, and burn down chart. And ideally you want this pink bar at the top of done to be or closed to be completely covering that bar here on the 26th by the time the sprint ends. And then for sprint activity and the last widget at the bottom, they're my 2 favorites. The sprint activity is a really easy one to try and understand. Okay, how many tickets do people have in progress and then to do? And do we need to try and refactor that baseline to make sure that our developers aren't overloaded with work and the work is spread evenly? But my favorite is here, and this eliminates the need for you to go back and forth between multiple products, whether that be ADO or Jira or Plandek. You can do everything within here, and you can make sure you're planning to deliver on time and quickly and within sprint by using this view. And I can see here, if I want to filter by tickets with all insights, I can do, and I can start in my stand-up and then integrate this into my sprint ceremonies and my daily stand-ups and say, okay, these are the tickets with insights. What are we doing against them? What are we doing to try and resolve them by the end of the sprint? I can filter by issue status. I can filter by issue type here as well. So if I wanted to have a look at specific stories rather than bugs and incidents, I can do. If I wanted to have a look at priorities, so I want to have a look at high priority stories as well. Okay, like what are we doing here to make sure these are both done? Because I can see one is done, but I can also see that this one here is in awaiting development. So what are we doing to try and resolve that? And I can also filter by assignee as well. So all this is trying to do is rather than, again, it's always good to have a look at the speed metrics and sort of understand where you are, but what SmartView does, it allows you to action things in real time as well within your current sprint to try and resolve that too. So yeah, I think I've got one more slide to present, and then I'll stop for a little bit of Q&A. So we've got here turning actions into impact. So there's a couple of things here that I wanted to talk about. So there's 4 actions, and the first is embedding the metrics into your rituals. As I mentioned with SmartView, the goal isn't to necessarily just get stuck in the numbers and measure performance. It's to try and improve it, and for that we need to turn these actions into these insights into action rather. And so the speed metrics are about enablement, and when they're used well, they become tools for coaching, collaboration, and continuous improvement. So the first is sort of making sure that data is visible. There should be the speed metrics and SmartView should be embedded into sprint ceremonies, into stand-ups, into retros, not hidden away. The second is align around ambition and not blame. So that is, sort of creating a shared language of what good looks like. Use the benchmarks as a guide for something that sets ambition and direction, and where you want to try and get to. The third is driving ownership from the ground up, and that is, can we empower teams to own their metrics instead of using speed and the data for speed as a top-down report card? Can we use it as a bottom-up reflection point? Invite teams to ask, what is slowing us down? What can we try in the next one to try and improve? And the last one is measuring the ripple effect. So when merge frequency improves, delivery accelerates. When time to merge drops, engineers stay in flow. And when lead time falls, customers get value faster. And each small improvement compounds into something even greater. So as you take this forward, think about how you embed speed thinking into your team's culture, not just as a KPI, but as a habit. And that is the ultimate way for improving as well. I can see there's a couple of questions. So I'll round off the Q&A. So let's see. So can we get metrics? Can we get those metrics drilled down per team rather than at org level? Yes, we can. So if I click off here and we go back into here, so in this workspace, you can see here that if I click into workspace settings, I'm only looking at one board and one team, which is our own internal team, Snowstorm. So this is only looking at one specific team. So if you wanted to have a look at the metrics in for an aggregated view for all of the teams, you'd go and click on the top level workspace. But what you can do is when you create a new workspace, as I showed you earlier. So if I go back into Masterclass series and I click on add workspace, rather than clicking create workspace for a collection of teams, I can just create a workspace for a team. I can call this team one, and then I can select the board and the repositories that are specific to that one team, and it will only show me metrics for that one team. So yeah, so not everything is at an aggregated view. They are specifically for team views, and you can aggregate them if you wanted another workspace as well. So yeah, you can get them down per team, and yeah, we can. If you're struggling to visualize that in the platform, I'm more than happy to help after this session as well. How can you prevent people from gaming the system, creating more PRs for the sake of reports? So we always try and say that if you break down your PRs into smaller chunks, you are more iterative. There is that risk of developers trying to game the system by going through PRs quickly. But what you can do is, let's say, for example, if I go back into the masterclass series here, so where are we? Here we go. And I go back into the speed metric, the speed dashboard, and have a look at time to merge PRs. If I click into, let's say, time to merge close, so these actually, rather than that, I'll go into the overtime view. Well, it'll show me this, and let's click on this data point here. So the week of the 16th of June to the 22nd of June. And I click on here. I can actually see the time it took to merge my PRs here, and so we can judging by that, we can actually see our teams speeding through that process. Are they, does it take like 0.01 hours? There isn't a way to prevent teams from gaming the system necessarily, but we do encourage smaller PR sizes to make sure they iterate quicker. But you can see by the time they take by clicking into the metric whether there is a slight issue happening there. So what I can do, is at the end of the session, I'll take some time to actually think about what we can do to try and, create something that will allow you to track those PRs that may have gone way too quickly. If there's a time frame or something like that to actually flag if there is any gamification going on. And Kareem, perfect. No worries. Thank you for the session. It would be great if you can share the presentation by email. I will definitely share that at the end of the session too. I do have one last request for people that are here. There is a poll in the session as well. So one sec, if I can just get this up for you now. Where are we? You can move that here. Okay, so I think that is all the questions answered. And thank you very much. I appreciate everyone joining too. So I'm just going to add the poll in here. So if you just give me a second, I'm just going to launch this poll. So if you could take a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds, there's only 4 questions in here. So if you could please respond to the poll before you go off the session, that would be super appreciated. And yeah, I really thank you for all of your time today. If you do have any questions at the end of the session as well, please, my email is in the invite. You have the in-product chat as well. So for those of you that aren't aware, there is, if you have a look at the bottom of the screen here in the, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, but yeah, in the bottom right of the screen, there's a little help button as well where you can chat to me or my colleagues. But yeah, I really super appreciate your time today. But my last request, if possible, is if you could actually, respond to the poll. That'd be really grateful because it will help us build the product for the future, make sure it's applicable to everyone that's attended, but also make sure that we're meeting all of your user needs as well. And so yeah, perfect. Well, I think that is everything from me. But yeah, more than happy to take any questions in the Q&A still. We've got a couple of minutes remaining. So I'll just double check that and see if there are any Q&A questions. Let's have a look. Q&A. Oh, I think that's everything. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you everybody, and I hope to see you at the next one. And yeah, please, if you have found this helpful, please let me know. But yeah, if you could answer that poll, that'd be greatly appreciated. So yeah, thank you all for your time, and I hope you have a lovely rest of the week. And I hope everyone stays safe from this heat wave as well. Thank you all.